Rebecca Thompson never imagined that the summer vacation at her older cousin's house would be the biggest nightmare for her 9-year-old daughter. For 3 weeks in Portland, Oregon, Madison would come home from Blake's room with red eyes and trembling hands. "It's just a joke between cousins, Mum," said the little girl in a weak voice. When Rebecca finally finds out what went on in that locked room, Blake's dark secret leaves the entire family in shock. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back a few weeks, when everything seemed normal and safe. Rebecca Thompson was 34 years old and worked as a nurse at the Swedish Medical Center in Seattle, Washington. After her divorce 2 years earlier, she built an orderly, loving life for her daughter Madison. The 9-year-old girl was the ray of sunshine in Rebecca's life. Madison had brown hair that fell to her shoulders, bright eyes, and a smile that lit up any room. He was a cheerful, confident child and loved to draw unicorns and princesses in his art notebook. The two lived in a cozy apartment in the Queen Anne neighborhood of Seattle. The routine was simple but full of affection. Rebecca would wake up early, prepare breakfast, take Madison to Roosevelt Elementary, and go to the hospital. In the evenings, they would have dinner together, talk about the day, and Madison would show them the drawings she had made. It was a quiet life, built with a lot of effort after the difficult divorce. Rebecca's family lived in Beaverton, a quiet suburb of Portland, Oregon, about a 3-hour drive from Seattle. Rebecca's parents' house was large, with a large backyard, a pool in the back, and barbecues that were always in use during the summer. Madison loved visiting her grandparents, playing with her 5 younger cousins, and swimming in the pool until the sun went down. That place represented security, joy, and family connection. Blake was Rebecca's cousin, the son of her younger sister. At 24, he was the oldest nephew in the family, an education student at Portland State University. Everyone in the family adored Blake. He was tall, friendly, always willing to help at family parties, and had a special ability to deal with children. Blake took the little ones to the mall, to eat ice cream at the local ice cream parlors, and organized movie nights in the basement of his grandparents' house. No one questioned the trust they placed in him. After all, he studied to be a teacher, took care of his cousins patiently, and always had a gentle smile on his face. In this video, you'll discover how one mother trusted her maternal instinct even when everyone said she was overreacting. You'll see how small signs, which most would ignore, have become the key to saving not only your daughter, but other children as well. Courage and determination can change everything in a matter of hours. Every detail here is based on real events that happened in an ordinary family, in an ordinary town, with people who seemed completely trustworthy. If you've made it this far, it's because real history interests you. Help this content reach more people. Leave the like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. Rebecca has always kept family traditions very strong, especially after the divorce. She knew Madison needed the connection to her extended family, to her grandparents, uncles, and cousins. Summer vacations were sacred moments. Every July, Rebecca would take 2 or 3 weeks off from the hospital and take Madison to spend time at her parents' house in Beaverton. The house was in a typical American residential neighborhood with wide streets, manicured lawns, and neighbors who greeted each other every morning. The house itself was large, with 3 bedrooms upstairs, a spacious living room, large kitchen with center island where the whole family gathered for breakfast, and the backyard that was a children's paradise. There was a rectangular pool with a trampoline, a covered area with gas grills, and a long wooden table that could easily fit 15 people. Madison loved this place since she was very little. She ran around the yard barefoot, jumped into the pool with her cousins, helped her grandmother bake chocolate chip cookies in the kitchen, and slept soundly every night, exhausted from playing. That was the safest place in the world for her, Blake was always there. He lived in an apartment near the university in Portland, but spent many weekends and vacations at his grandparents' house. He had a special way with children. He organized games in the backyard, proposed hide-and-seek games throughout the house, took the little ones to have milkshakes at the local cafeterias, and at night set up movie sessions in the basement with popcorn and soda. Everyone in the family praised Blake constantly. Rebecca's mother said that he was a golden boy, responsible and affectionate. His uncles commented that it was rare to see a 24-year-old so dedicated to his family. Rebecca herself has always had a good impression of her cousin. He seemed genuine, polite, and genuinely interested in the well-being of children. After all, he was studying education at Portland State University. He wanted to be an elementary school teacher. It made perfect sense that he enjoyed spending time with the little ones so much. In the second week of July that summer, Rebecca noticed something different when she picked up Madison after an entire afternoon at her grandparents' house. It was a sunny Thursday, around 6 in the afternoon. Rebecca had worked part-time at the hospital in Seattle and drove to Beaverton to pick up her daughter. When he arrived, the house was as full of life as ever. The cousins were playing in the backyard, Rebecca's mother was in the kitchen preparing dinner, and Madison was sitting alone on the living room couch, staring into space. Rebecca walked through the front door and called her daughter with joy. Madison got up slowly, grabbed her backpack, and walked to her car without saying much. That was strange. Normally, Madison chatted endlessly about everything she had done during the day, about playing with her cousins, about the cookies her grandmother had made. But that day, she was too quiet. In the car, Rebecca watched her daughter in the rearview mirror as she drove back to Seattle. Madison was looking out the window, watching the Portland landscape flash by. Green trees, wooden houses, traffic signs, everything passed in silence. "How are you, my love?" Rebecca asked in a soft voice, trying not to look too worried. Madison just nodded, a small, energyless movement. She didn't take her eyes off the window. Rebecca felt a tightness in her chest. It was a strange feeling, a vague discomfort that she couldn't name. Maybe her daughter was just tired. After all, she had spent the whole day playing with 5 energetic cousins. It was natural to be exhausted. Rebecca tried to convince herself of this, but the tightness in her chest did not completely disappear. That night, after a light dinner at her Seattle apartment, Madison ordered something she hadn't asked for in months. She wanted to sleep with the lamplight on. Rebecca thought it was strange. Madison was always a brave child who slept peacefully in the dark since she was 6, but that night she insisted that the light stay on. "Mom, can you leave the light on?" Madison asked in a low voice, holding the teddy bear to her chest. "Of course, daughter." "That's okay," Rebecca responded, adjusting the blanket over the girl and giving her a kiss on the forehead. Rebecca left the room with her heart still tight. Something was different, but she didn't know what. She tried to push that thought away, telling herself that she was exaggerating, that it was just her daughter's tiredness, that it was no big deal. But deep inside, a small voice whispered that something wasn't right. Over the next few days, Rebecca began to notice a strange pattern. Whenever Blake invited Madison to watch movies in his room or to play video games, the girl came back different. More withdrawn, she avoided eye contact and was quiet for hours. Rebecca was paying attention now. She watched everything more carefully. The following weekend, when they returned to Beaverton, Rebecca noticed that Blake constantly offered to take Madison to do things on their own. "Let's play video games in my room, Madison," he said with a smile. "Or I have a new movie to watch. Do you want to see it with me?" Madison always accepted, but with an expression that Rebecca began to recognize. It wasn't genuine excitement. It was more like resignation, as if she felt she needed to go. After those occasions when Madison returned to the others, Rebecca would ask casually, "Was it fun, daughter?" Madison would just mutter a low yes and run to the bathroom or go drink water or make up some excuse to walk away. Rebecca noticed that this happened specifically when Blake was alone with Madison. When all the cousins were together playing in the backyard, Madison seemed lighter, more herself. But when Blake called her to be alone, something changed. Rebecca tried to dispel her concern. "I thought maybe it was just a phase." Madison was approaching 10 years old. Perhaps it was the beginning of pre-adolescence. Maybe she was feeling shy or going through emotional changes that Rebecca didn't fully understand. She didn't want to be a paranoid mother. She didn't want to see danger where there wasn't any. But the discomfort persisted. It grew slowly, like a shadow that stretched further each day. In the middle of the 3rd week of July, Rebecca decided to ask directly. She chose a neutral moment, away from her grandparents' house, away from Blake. It was a Saturday morning, and they were at Denny's, a local diner in Beaverton. Rebecca had taken Madison out for breakfast, just the two of them, as they did from time to time. Madison was sitting in front of her, stirring the pancakes with her fork, not really eating. The plate was full, almost untouched. Rebecca watched her daughter for a few seconds before speaking. She reached across the table and held Madison's little hand fondly. "Daughter, are you enjoying spending time with Cousin Blake?" The question came naturally, with a light tone, without accusation. Rebecca didn't want to scare the girl. Madison froze. For a full 2 seconds, she stood completely still, staring at the pancakes. Then he forced a weak smile and looked at his mother. "Yes, Mom, he's cool." But Rebecca noticed her daughter's hands shaking slightly. The fork rattled against the plate. "What do you do in his room?" Rebecca insisted softly, keeping her tone calm, almost casual. Madison swallowed. His eyes brightened as if he were holding back tears. "Just special games, Mom. I can't tell you, it's our secret." The word secret fell like a stone in Rebecca's stomach. Secrets with adults. Special games. It all sounded wrong. Profoundly wrong. "Why is it a secret, daughter? You can tell me everything, always." Rebecca tried again, shaking the girl's hand more affectionately. Madison shook her head quickly, let go of her mother's hand, and asked to go to the bathroom. She got up from the table and walked quickly to the back of the cafeteria. Rebecca sat alone, staring at her daughter's plate full of pancakes. His heart was beating faster now. That wasn't right. None of that was right. Rebecca returned to Seattle with Madison that weekend, but she couldn't stop thinking about the words special pranks and secrecy. They echoed in her mind constantly while she worked at the hospital, while she cooked dinner, while she tried to sleep at night. She began to mentally review every moment of the past few weeks. Blake always offered to stay with Madison while the adults went out to dinner at Portland restaurants. He always insisted that Madison had better stay because the places were boring for children, because she would get tired, because she would rather play at home. At the time, Rebecca had found it kind of him. She thought Blake was being considerate, relieving her responsibility. But now, looking back at everything with different eyes, it seemed calculated. It seemed deliberate. It seemed as if Blake created opportunities to be alone with Madison. Rebecca needed to talk to someone. He needed to know if he was going crazy or if his suspicions made sense. She called her sister-in-law Jennifer, the mother of Sophie, one of Madison's cousins. The call was casual, light. Rebecca asked how the family was doing, how Sophie was having fun on vacation. And then, as if he didn't want anything, he asked the question that really mattered. "Jennifer, do you think Blake can be trusted with the kids?" There was a short pause on the other end of the line. Then Jennifer replied with surprise in her voice, "Of course, Rebecca. He is an angel. He takes great care of everyone. It has always been like this." "Why? Did something happen?" Rebecca swallowed. No, just curiosity. Madison is a little quiet these days. I thought maybe she was tired of the games." Jennifer laughed. "Oh yes, Blake keeps them very busy, but it's all healthy play. You know how it is. A love of a person." Rebecca thanked her and hung up the phone. She felt partially relieved, but the discomfort lingered like a shadow. Everyone trusted Blake. Everyone thought he was wonderful. So why did Rebecca feel so restless? Why didn't that tightness in my chest go away? If this revelation is arousing in you a deep curiosity about what really happened, comment right now, "I want more stories," and please leave your like on this video. One August night in Seattle, everything changed. Rebecca was in the living room of the apartment watching television after Madison had gone to sleep. It was almost 11 o'clock at night when he heard the crying. A soft, muffled cry coming from Madison's room. Rebecca jumped up and ran down the hall. He opened the door to the room decorated with posters of unicorns and bright stars. Madison was sitting on the bed, hugging the teddy bear, crying with her face hidden. "What's wrong, my love? Tell Mom." Rebecca sat up on the bed and hugged her daughter, trembling. Madison sobbed non-stop. His small body trembled all over. Rebecca held her tightly, stroking her hair, hoping she would calm down enough to speak. After long minutes, Madison finally mumbled something between her sobs. "Mom, I don't want to go back to Grandma's house in Portland if Blake is there." Rebecca's heart almost stopped. She felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. "Why, daughter, did he do something that scared you?" Madison hesitated. Her eyes were red from crying. She looked at her mother with an expression that broke Rebecca's heart. It was fear mixed with guilt, as if she was about to reveal something terrible. Then, in a voice so low that Rebecca could barely hear, Madison whispered, "He said that if I tell you our special secret, bad things will happen to you, Mom. He said you can get sick, very sick, and I don't want you to get sick. I don't want to lose you." Rebecca felt a chill down her spine running through her entire body. His hands began to tremble. She had to take 3 deep breaths before she could speak again. "Daughter, look at me. Nothing bad will happen to me. I promise. But I need you to tell me what's going on. I need to know what Blake is doing." Madison shook her head, crying harder now. "I can't, Mom. I promised. He said it's our secret alone." Rebecca hugged her daughter tightly, feeling tears begin to run down her face. She needed to stay calm. It needed to be strong. But inside I was panicking. But what happened in the next few hours would destroy all the certainties she had. Rebecca didn't sleep that night. After Madison finally fell asleep, exhausted from crying, Rebecca went to the living room of the apartment and turned on her laptop. She needed to understand what was happening. He needed to know if his suspicions made sense or if he was creating monsters where they didn't exist. She researched signs of child abuse. Every article he read confirmed his worst fears: change in behavior, sudden fear of places or people once loved, secrets with adults, emotional manipulation through threats, isolation, red eyes, nightmares, regression in behaviors such as needing the light on to sleep. Each sign matched perfectly with what Madison was presenting. Every word Rebecca read made her stomach turn. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't exaggerating. Something was terribly wrong, but Rebecca also knew she needed concrete evidence. "I couldn't just accuse Blake without evidence. He was loved by the whole family. He was respected, studied to be a teacher, took care of the children for years." If Rebecca came to the family with unproven accusations, no one would believe her. Worse, they could turn on her, say that she was paranoid, that she was trying to destroy the reputation of an innocent young man. The next morning, Rebecca came up with a plan. She called her mother in Beaverton and, in a calm, controlled voice, made up an excuse. "Mom, Madison left her favorite teddy bear in the house. She's asking every day. Can I stop by on Friday to pick it up?" Rebecca's mother responded with affection. "Of course, daughter. Come whenever you want. By the way, Blake will be here on Friday afternoon. He can deliver it to you if you want." Rebecca felt her heart tighten, but she kept her voice steady. "No need, Mum. I'll stop by, take the opportunity to have a coffee with you." Perfect. She had the pretext. Now he needed the courage to carry out the plan. Rebecca would arrive by surprise on Friday afternoon. Blake used to be alone with the children at that time, while his grandparents went shopping or rested. She would arrive unannounced, enter the house quietly, and find out what was really going on in that locked room. Her maternal instinct screamed that something was deeply wrong. And this time, Rebecca would no longer ignore it. If you're here so far, it's because this story is stirring you. What follows will show the exact moment when everything changed. Therefore, at the end of this video, we will reveal the complete outcome with details that few know. Stay with me until the end. The days up to Friday passed in slow motion. Rebecca tried to maintain her normal routine, working at the hospital, taking care of Madison, preparing meals. But inside, she was consumed by anxiety and fear of what she would discover. Madison remained quiet. She ate little, played less, drew unicorns with darker colors than before. Rebecca observed everything, mentally wrote down every change, every sign. She talked to her daughter with affection, always reinforcing that Madison could tell her anything, that she would always be protected, that nothing bad would happen to her mom. But Madison kept the secret. The fear Blake had planted in her was too deep to be broken with words. On Thursday night, Rebecca prepared everything for the next day. She asked for time off at the hospital where she worked as a nurse, claiming a family emergency. The supervisor didn't question. Rebecca rarely asked for time off and was always a dedicated employee. Rebecca also called Sarah, her best friend in Seattle. Sarah had a daughter the same age as Madison, and the two girls were close friends. "Sarah, can I leave Madison with you tomorrow morning? I have an urgent work meeting in Portland." Sarah accepted without hesitation. "Of course, Rebecca. Leave her here. The girls will love to play together." Rebecca didn't want Madison to be present when she confronted Blake. She wanted to protect her daughter from witnessing any scene that might happen. Madison was traumatized enough. On Friday morning, Rebecca woke up with her heart racing. She made breakfast for Madison, helped the girl pack a small backpack with toys and clothes, and drove to Sarah's house. "You're going to have a great time today, my love. Mum will come back later to pick you up," Rebecca said, hugging Madison tightly before leaving. Madison waved and entered Sarah's house. Rebecca stayed in the car for a few seconds, watching her daughter disappear through the door. Then he took a deep breath and started driving towards Portland. The 3 hours from Seattle to Beaverton seemed endless. Rebecca drove, with her hands sweating on the steering wheel, her heart racing, her mind racing with 1,000 different possibilities. What would she find? Would he be able to handle what he would see? What if it was wrong? What if you were destroying the life of an innocent person? But then she remembered Madison's face, the red eyes, the trembling hands, the desperate crying that August night, and she knew she wasn't wrong. He knew something terrible was happening. Rebecca arrived in Beaverton around 2 in the afternoon. It was a sunny Friday, the blue sky cloudless, summer at its peak. She drove slowly down her parents' street, taking in the quiet neighborhood, the well-kept houses, the green trees. When he arrived in front of his parents' house, he saw Blake's car parked in the garage, a silver Civic. He was there. Rebecca parked on the street, a few meters in front of the house. She turned off the engine and sat in silence for a few minutes. He took 3 deep breaths, trying to calm his heart that was beating out of control. His hands trembled. She pressed them against her legs to try to control it. Then, with a last deep breath, Rebecca got out of the car. She walked to the front door and used the key she always had. He entered silently, closing the door carefully so as not to make a noise. The house was in unsettling silence. There were no voices coming from the kitchen or the living room. The grandparents had probably gone out shopping, as they used to do on Friday afternoons. Rebecca stood in the foyer for a few seconds, listening. Then he heard muffled voices coming from the second floor, low voices, almost whispers. and one of them was a child. Rebecca's blood ran cold in her veins. She began to climb the stairs, step by step, slowly, trying not to make a sound. Each step seemed like an eternity. Her heart was beating so hard that she was sure someone could hear it. Arriving on the second floor, Rebecca recognized the child's voice. It wasn't Madison. It was Sophie, Jennifer's daughter, an 8-year-old cousin. What was Sophie doing there? Why was she in Blake's room? Why did her voice sound so low, so scared? Rebecca felt a wave of nausea rise up her throat. It wasn't just Madison. Blake was doing this with other kids as well. Without a second thought, driven by a protective instinct she didn't even know she had, Rebecca walked to Blake's bedroom door and opened it sharply. The scene before her confirmed all the nightmares. Blake was sitting on the bed with his laptop open, showing inappropriate images on the screen. Sophie was sitting next to him, eyes wide, body tense, with the expression of someone who was paralyzed with fear. Blake touched the girl's shoulder in a strange way, too intimate, too wrong. Rebecca felt a surge of protective fury that she had never experienced before in her life. It was as if all the love he felt for Madison, for Sophie, for all the children in the family, was transformed into an absolute strength. "Get away from it now!" Her voice came out as a scream she didn't recognize as her own. She was powerful, full of anger and despair and determination. Blake jumped back, trying to close the laptop quickly. His face turned pale with fright. He opened his mouth, but not a word came out. Rebecca entered the room and pulled Sophie close to her, putting the girl behind her, protecting her with her own body. Sophie began to cry softly, trembling all over. And Rebecca knew, with absolute certainty, that her life and the lives of many children had changed forever in that moment. Nothing in this story happened by chance. What you are discovering here may be the missing piece to understand everything. Stay until the end, as the most surprising moment is yet to come. "Rebecca, what are you doing here?" Blake tried to speak, but his voice came out shaky, unsure. He quickly placed himself between Rebecca and the laptop, as if to hide what she had already seen. But it was too late. Rebecca had seen it all. I had seen the images on the screen. He had seen his hand on Sophie's shoulder. He had seen the terror in the girl's eyes. "I know what you're doing!" Rebecca screamed with a force that came from a place deep within her, a place of absolute protection, of maternal fury that knew no bounds. She moved quickly, pulling Sophie close to her, putting the girl behind her own body, creating a physical barrier between the child and Blake. Sophie was shaking, crying softly, clinging to Rebecca's shirt tightly. "You're crazy." Blake tried to laugh, but the sound came out fake, desperate. "We were just playing an online game. It's an educational game about American history. I was going to show her how it works," but his hands trembled visibly. He couldn't keep his gaze fixed on Rebecca. His eyes were constantly averted, looking for a way out, a way to escape from that situation. Rebecca felt the bag on her shoulder and quickly reached for her cell phone. With hands that also trembled, but out of anger and not fear, she opened the camera and began to record. "Repeat this in front of the camera, then. Explain what game this is. Show me what you were doing." Blake turned pale. He looked at the phone in Rebecca's hand as if it were a gun pointed at him. "You can't record me. This is an invasion of privacy. I'm going to sue you for this." His voice was rising in pitch now, getting higher pitched, more desperate. He took a step toward the laptop, clearly trying to close it, trying to erase evidence. Rebecca blocked the way. She placed herself between Blake and the door, still holding Sophie behind her. "You're not going anywhere. The police are coming." She wasn't sure if the police were really coming at that exact moment, but she knew she needed to keep him there. She needed to stop him from fleeing or destroying evidence. Blake tried one more time. "Rebecca, you're completely wrong. It's me, Blake. You've known me since I was a kid. I would never do anything to hurt these girls. They are my family." And it was at that moment that Sophie spoke. His voice was soft, almost a whisper but charged with a truth that cut through the air like a blade. I wanted to tell my mother. She sobbed, still clinging to Rebecca, but he said it was a special secret. He said something bad was going to happen if I told him. I said my mother was going to get sick. The same words, exactly the same words Madison had used. Rebecca felt nausea rise up her throat. The manipulation was identical. Blake used the same tactic with all of them. It created fear, it created guilt, it created secrets that imprisoned children in silence. She looked at Blake with a mixture of horror and disgust. "The police are coming, Blake, and you'll pay for everything you've done, by Madison, by Sophie, and for all the other children you manipulated." Blake took a step back. His face was completely white now. He looked out the window, as if calculating whether he could escape there, but they were on the second floor. It would be impossible. So he tried one last approach. His voice became soft, almost pleading. "Rebecca, please, you don't understand. It is not what it seems. Let me explain. We can talk about it as adults. You don't need to involve the police. Think about the family. Think about what this will do to my parents, to your mother." But Rebecca was beyond being manipulated. She had seen too much. I knew too much. "The only thing I think about is these children. How many nights have they spent awake, afraid, keeping secrets that should never have been theirs to keep?" At that moment, Rebecca heard the distant sound of sirens. She had actually called 911 before entering the house, when she was still in the car. He had done this discreetly, with the phone on his lap, while observing his parents' house. She had quickly explained to the attendant that she suspected child abuse in progress, had given the address, had asked them to come immediately, but without sirens until they got close. Now the sirens were on. They were coming. Blake listened too. His eyes widened. He looked at the door, at Rebecca, at Sophie, back at the door. "You destroyed my life," he said, and for the first time there was something true in his voice. It was not regret. It was anger. It was resentment. "You destroyed everything." "No," Rebecca answered in a firm voice. "You destroyed your own life when you chose to hurt children, when you chose to abuse the trust they placed in you." The sirens were louder now. Rebecca could hear tires braking on the street in front of the house. In less than 12 minutes since Rebecca had made the call, 2 Beaverton police cars pulled up in front of the house. Rebecca heard car doors slamming, quick footsteps up the entrance steps. Blake made one last, desperate attempt. His voice came out loud, almost hysterical. "This is a ridiculous misunderstanding. I would never do anything to hurt these children. I study education. I'm going to be a teacher. My whole life is dedicated to helping children." But at that moment, 2 police officers appeared at the door of the room. One of them was an older man with grey hair and a serious expression. The other was younger, with an alert look that immediately assessed the situation. "Ma'am, did you call 911? The older officer asked, looking at Rebecca. "Yes, I called," Rebecca said, and her voice was surprisingly calm now. "My name is Rebecca Thompson. This is my cousin Sophie. She is 8 years old. I found this man, Blake Morrison, showing inappropriate images for her on this laptop." Rebecca pointed to the computer still open on the bed. "And I have everything recorded here on my cell phone." She showed the phone to the officers. The video was still recording. The younger officer walked over to his laptop and looked at the screen. Rebecca saw her jaw clench. He looked at his partner and nodded. "Mr. Morrison, you must come with us," the older officer said, in a professional but firm voice. "I didn't do anything wrong," Blake insisted, but his voice was breaking now. "This is a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. You will have the opportunity to explain at the police station. For now, we need you to come with us." The officer asked to see Blake's laptop. With gloves he took out of his pocket, he began to browse through his computer's history and folders. The silence that followed was heavy. Rebecca saw the officer's expression change as he saw what was stored there. His brows furrowed. His mouth formed a hard line. "Mr. Morrison, you are under arrest," the officer said finally. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court." While reading Blake's rights, the younger officer put handcuffs on his wrists. Blake was silent at last. His head dropped. He no longer tried to defend himself. It was as if all the energy had left him at once. The older officer approached Rebecca and Sophie. He crouched down to stand at Sophie's height and spoke in a gentle voice. "Are you okay, baby? Are you hurt?" Sophie shook her head, still clinging to Rebecca. "We'll need to talk to you and your mom later, okay? But now you're safe." Then he stood up and looked at Rebecca. There was respect in his eyes, and something that felt like gratitude. "You saved this child today, and possibly many others." Rebecca felt tears begin to run down her face. They were tears of relief, of exhaustion, of a confusing mix of emotions that she couldn't even name. "He was doing it to my daughter too," she said, her voice breaking, "with Madison, my 9-year-old daughter, for weeks, and I didn't know. I should have known before." The officer placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. The lady trusted her instinct. He acted when he realized that something was wrong. Many people ignore these signs. You did not ignore it. You saved these children. Rebecca immediately called Jennifer. With trembling hands, she dialed her sister-in-law's number as the officers led Blake down the stairs. Jennifer answered the second ring, cheerful and carefree voice. "Hi, Rebecca, how are you?" "Jennifer, you need to come to your mother's house now. It's about Sophie. It's okay with her now, she's safe, but you need to come right away." "What happened?" Jennifer's voice changed instantly, filling with panic. "Is Sophie okay? Is she hurt? She is physically well, but please, Jennifer, come now." Jennifer arrived in less than 10 minutes. She should have driven way over the speed limit. When she entered the house and saw Sophie crying, saw the cops, saw Blake being put in the patrol car, she stopped in the middle of the room, eyes wide. "What's happening? What did Blake do?" Rebecca took her to a more reserved corner and, in a low but firm voice, told her everything. He told Madison about his suspicions, about his daughter's partial confession, about what she had found when she entered the room. Jennifer began to tremble. Her legs failed, and she had to sit on the couch. Then she began to cry, deep sobs that shook her whole body. Sophie ran to her, and Jennifer hugged her tightly as if she wanted to absorb her daughter into herself, protect her from everything that had happened. "Oh my God! Oh my God! How did I not notice?" Jennifer repeated between sobs. "She was in front of me this whole time and I didn't see anything." "He was very good at hiding," Rebecca said softly. "He manipulated children. He made them keep secrets. He threatened that bad things would happen if they told." Jennifer looked at Sophie, held her daughter's face with both hands. "Why didn't you tell me, my love? Why?" Sophie cried harder. "He said you were going to get sick. He said that if I told you the special secret, you would go to the hospital and die." Jennifer pulled her daughter back into the embrace, crying along with her. "If you're here, it's because this story deserves to be heard. I believe that what comes next will surprise you even more. Don't leave this video before you find out how it all ended." Over the next 48 hours, the police investigation revealed an extent of the horror that no one could have imagined. Blake was formally interrogated. Initially, he tried to deny everything. He said he was innocent, that Rebecca had misinterpreted the situation, that the images on the laptop were not his, that someone must have hacked into his computer. But when forensic investigators began analyzing Blake's laptop and cell phone, they found irrefutable evidence. Dozens of inappropriate images, conversations with minors, messages exchanged with other people with similar interests. A complete history that painted a devastating picture. And then, as the investigation deepened, other victims began to emerge. Police interviewed all the children who had had regular contact with Blake over the past 2 years. With expert therapists present, with care and sensitivity, they talked to each child. In addition to Madison and Sophie, they discovered 3 other victims. Emma was 7 years old. She was the daughter of the family's neighbors in Beaverton. Blake used to offer to take care of her when her parents needed to leave. His parents trusted him completely. After all, he was a university student, he studied education, he was loved by everyone. Lily was 9 years old. She was a distant cousin, visiting her family a few times a year during holidays. Blake always made a point of spending time with her, taking her to the park for ice cream. The family thought it was beautiful to see the older cousin being so attentive to the girl. Chloe was 10 years old. She was the daughter of family friends who attended the same church. Blake had volunteered to help with the children's group on Sundays. Everyone praised his dedication, his patience, his way with the children. Each of them had kept the secret. Each of them had been manipulated with the same tactics, veiled threats about bad things happening to the people they loved, creation of guilt, normalization of inappropriate behavior through words like special joke and secret of ours. For 18 months, Blake had operated freely, hidden behind a respectable and trustworthy young man's mask. When the families received the news, the shock was collective and devastating. Word spread quickly through the Beaverton community, first through urgent phone calls between family members, then through text messages in family groups, and then, inevitably, through social media. At Portland State University, where Blake was a student, the administration was notified by police. An internal investigation began immediately. Blake was expelled from the university even before any formal trial. The university issued a statement saying it did not tolerate any behavior that put children at risk and that it was fully cooperating with authorities. Blake's name began circulating on local social media. Parent groups in Beaverton and Portland shared the news, alerting others to what had happened. His photo was shared hundreds of times, with warnings for other families to check if their children had had contact with him. Blake's parents, Rebecca's uncles, were completely devastated. His mother spent 3 days without getting out of bed, in deep shock. His father cried openly, repeating that he didn't understand, that he didn't know how it had happened under their noses. They called each affected family, apologizing in voices broken with emotion. "How can we not understand?" Blake's mother asked on every call. "He grew up in our house. We created it. How could we create someone capable of this?" Rebecca spoke to them on the phone a few days later. The conversation was difficult, painful for both sides. "You are not to blame," Rebecca said, and it was true. He deceived us all. He was very good at appearing trustworthy, but the guilt Blake's parents carried was deep and likely to be long-lasting. In the community, emergency meetings were organized. The local church where the family attended called an assembly to discuss child protection. The Beaverton Community Center hosted talks on how to spot signs of abuse, how to create safe environments for children, how to talk to children about secrets and privacy. Rebecca was invited to speak at some of these meetings. Initially, she hesitated. She didn't feel comfortable being seen as a hero. He felt that he had failed to realize earlier, to not protect Madison sooner, but the other mothers insisted, especially Jennifer, Emma, and Lily and Chloe's mothers. "You were the only one who trusted instinct and took action," Jennifer told her during a phone call. "While we all ignore the signs, while we all blindly believe, you questioned, you investigated, you saved our daughters." The 5 mothers began to meet regularly. First, it was just for mutual support, to process the collective trauma, to share the guilt and fear that everyone carried. They would meet in a quiet coffee shop in Portland, a place with comfy couches and soft music in the background. They brought coffee and tea, sat in a circle, and talked. They talked about the signs they had missed, about changes in behavior that they had rationalized as normal phases, about the blind trust they had placed in Blake simply because he was family, because he was a college student, Because everyone liked him. I saw Sophie asking not to go to Grandma's house anymore on some weekends. Jennifer confessed in one of these meetings, and I forced her to go. He said that she was being spoiled, that she needed to spend time with her family. My God, I forced my daughter to go to a place where she was being abused. She cried, and the other mothers hugged her. Rebecca also shared her guilt. He talked about the weeks when he saw Madison changing, and he tried to ignore it. He tried to rationalize it. He tried to believe that he was exaggerating. But you acted when you were sure, Emma's mother said. When you knew something was wrong, you didn't stop until you found out the truth. It was this mutual encouragement that eventually led Rebecca to agree to speak at community meetings. This story is not for everyone. If you are here, it is because you want to know the truth behind the facts. Are you ready for the final reveal? Rebecca returned to Seattle that Sunday, 2 days after she was caught. Madison was still at Sarah's house, sheltered from the chaos that had unfolded in Portland. When Rebecca arrived to pick up her daughter, Sarah took her to the kitchen while the girls played in the living room. Sarah had seen the news. I had read the posts on social networks. She hugged Rebecca tightly, saying nothing for a few minutes. You were incredibly brave, Sarah said finally. I should have realized it sooner, Rebecca replied, tears beginning to fall again. You realized when you needed to realize it, and he acted. That's what matters. Rebecca took Madison back to the apartment in Queen Anne. During the drive, Madison was quiet, looking out the window. She knew something big had happened. Rebecca had only said that she had to solve something important in Portland, but Madison was smart. She felt it had to do with Blake. At home, Rebecca prepared hot chocolate for the two of them. It was late Sunday afternoon, the sun beginning to set over Seattle, painting the sky oranges and pinks. They sat together on the sofa in the living room. Rebecca placed the mugs on the coffee table and then turned completely to Madison. She held her daughter's little hands with all the affection in the world and looked straight into her eyes. My love, I need to tell you something very important. Madison looked at her with big eyes, waiting. Remember when you told me about the secret with Blake, about the things he said he couldn't tell? Madison nodded slowly, her body tensing up. You were the bravest girl I know. Rebecca continued, shaking her hands. You told me even though you were afraid. And you know what? When you told me, it gave me the courage to find out the truth. And because of your courage, you saved not only yourself, but also other children. Madison began to cry softly, silent tears running down her cheeks. I thought no one would believe me, she said in a broken voice. Everyone likes Blake. Everyone thinks he's cool. I thought they were going to say I was lying. Rebecca felt her heart break. She pulled Madison into a tight hug, clutching her daughter to her chest. I will always believe in you. Always. It doesn't matter who the other person is. It doesn't matter what anyone says. Your voice is the most important to me. Madison buried her face in her mother's shoulder and cried harder now. It wasn't silent tears anymore. It was deep sobs, years of fear and shame and guilt finally being released. Rebecca held her, caressing her hair, letting her cry everything she needed to cry. After a few minutes, Madison pulled back a bit and looked at her mother with red but hopeful eyes. Won't he hurt me anymore? Her voice was small, vulnerable. Never again. Rebecca said with absolute firmness, he is in prison. The police have proof of everything he did. He will respond in court, and he will never, ever come close to you or any other child again. Madison took a deep breath, as if testing whether she could believe it. You are safe now, my love, completely safe. And for the first time in weeks, Madison seemed to really relax. His shoulders dropped, his face softened. She snuggled back into her mother's embrace and stayed there, just feeling the safety, the protection, the unconditional love. That night, Madison slept without needing the light on. She slept through the night, without nightmares, without waking up crying. and Rebecca sat by her bed for hours, just watching her daughter sleep, silently thanking her for trusting her instinct, for taking action, for saving her little girl. In the following weeks, the legal process formally began. Blake was charged with 5 felonies involving minors in the state of Oregon. Washington County prosecutors filed the charges based on irrefutable digital evidence found on his laptop and cell phone, as well as victims' statements. Rebecca followed the entire legal process as a main witness. She had to give detailed testimony about what she saw when she entered the room, about the recording she made, about the weeks of suspicion that preceded the act. It was difficult to relive everything. Every time she had to tell the story to lawyers, to prosecutors, to investigators, she felt the same nausea, the same anger, the same horror. But she persisted, because I knew it was necessary, because she knew that Madison and the other girls needed justice. The other families were also present at all the hearings. Jennifer, Emma's mother, Lily, and Chloe's mothers. They sat together in the courtroom galleries, a tight-knit row of mothers determined to see justice done. Meanwhile, Madison began specialized therapy. Rebecca looked for recommendations through the hospital where she worked and found Dr. Amanda Foster, a psychologist specializing in child trauma, located in Seattle. The first consultation was challenging. Madison barely spoke. She sat in the therapy room, filled with colorful toys and soft cushions, and stood silently, staring at the floor. Dr. Foster did not force it. She casually talked about neutral things, about the Madison School, about drawings of unicorns, about favorite colors, establishing trust slowly. It took 3 sessions before Madison began to talk about what had happened. And when he finally spoke, it was in small fragments. A sentence here, a memory there. Painful pieces that she was putting together with the help of the therapist. Rebecca participated in some sessions. Dr. Foster explained that it was important for Madison to see that her mother believed in her, that she was there for support, that there was no shame or secret anymore. Over time, week after week, Madison began to improve. He began to talk more, to smile again, to draw unicorns with bright colors instead of dark ones. Dr. Foster explained to Rebecca that it would be a long process. Trauma doesn't go away overnight. There would be setbacks, difficult moments, unexpected triggers. But with consistent support, with regular therapy, with unconditional love, Madison would recover. The other children also started psychological counseling. Sophie began therapy with a specialist in Portland. Emma, Lily, and Chloe were also referred to qualified professionals. The 5 mothers created a support group that met every 2 weeks. They met at a cozy coffee shop in Portland, near downtown, a place with wooden tables and walls decorated with local art. In these meetings, they shared the journey of recovery. They talked about their daughter's progress, about the challenges they faced, about the feelings of guilt they still carried. Madison had a nightmare this week, one of them said. He woke up crying, asking to check if the doors were locked. Sophie doesn't want to go to Grandma's house anymore, another shared, even though she knows Blake is in prison, even though she knows she's safe there. The place is associated with trauma. They exchanged strategies, they shared resources, they recommended therapists, books, calming techniques. They became an essential support network for each other, and gradually, very gradually, they began to see signs of healing in her daughters and in herself. Rebecca also started therapy. Initially she resisted. She thought she didn't need to, that she should focus all her energy on helping Madison, but Dr. Foster strongly suggested, "You've also been through trauma. You carry guilt, anger, fear. Processing this is not weakness. It is necessary for you to be able to be strong for your daughter." Then Rebecca started seeing a therapist who specializes in vicarious trauma and parental stress. In the sessions, she finally allowed herself to process everything that had happened, the guilt for not having realized it before, Blake's anger at betraying everyone's trust, the fear of what might have happened if she hadn't acted. And slowly, with professional help, Rebecca began to forgive herself. He began to understand that he had done the best he could with the information he had, that when he realized that something was wrong, he acted decisively, who saved not only his daughter, but other children as well. The legal process was advancing. Blake's lawyers tried various defense strategies, first complete denial, then claims that digital evidence had been planted, then attempts at plea bargain agreements, but the prosecutors were relentless. The evidence was too much. The children's testimonies were consistent and corroborated by physical evidence. There was no way to escape. 6 months after the flagrant, it was clear that Blake would be convicted. The only issue was the severity of the sentence. The families prepared for the victims' impact statements, the opportunity to tell the judge how the crime had affected their lives. Rebecca spent days writing and rewriting her testimony. I wanted it to be perfect. He wanted the judge to fully understand the magnitude of what Blake had done. And when the day came to speak in court, with Blake sitting a few feet from her, Rebecca read his words in a clear, firm voice. He talked about the Madison he had known before, cheerful and confident, and about the Madison she saw emerge during those weeks of abuse, quiet and scared. He talked about the nightmares, about the light that needed to be lit, about the silent tears. He spoke about the betrayal of trust, about how Blake used his position within the family, his reputation as a student of education, his gentle ways to gain access to vulnerable children. And he spoke about the recovery, about how much work, therapy, love and time would be needed for these 5 girls to be able to trust again, to be able to feel safe again. The other mothers also gave their testimonies, each one sharing the pain, the fear, the betrayal they felt. Blake didn't look at any of them. He kept his eyes down during all the testimonies. Before we continue, help bring real stories to those who really care. If you want to be part of this mission, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. 6 months after the incident, in February of the following year, the day of sentencing arrived at the Oregon court in Portland. The air was cold and humid, typical of winter in the Pacific Northwest, but inside the courtroom the atmosphere was even heavier. Rebecca arrived early, dressed in a simple coat and dark pants, accompanied by Jennifer and the other 3 mothers. They occupied an entire row in the gallery, holding hands in silence, waiting for the moment they all longed for and dreaded at the same time. Madison stayed in Seattle with Sarah, protected from reliving the trauma publicly. Rebecca had explained to her daughter that it was an important day to make sure no one else suffered like them, and Madison, now stronger with therapy, had nodded with understanding. The courtroom was formal, with dark wood walls, American flags in the background, and the judge on the raised dais. Blake entered handcuffed, escorted by 2 guards. He looked smaller now, his shoulders hunched, his face pale without the confident smile he had before. Their fathers were sitting on the other side, heads down, avoiding looking at the mothers of the victims. The defense attorney made one last plea, talking about Blake's youth, his unantecedent record, and the wasted potential as a future teacher. But the evidence was irrefutable. The laptop, the cell phone, the testimonies of the 5 girls, corroborated by experts in childhood trauma. The judge, a middle-aged man with thick glasses and a stern expression, slammed the gavel to silence the room. He read the sentence in a deep, paused voice, looking directly at Blake. "You have betrayed the trust of children and families in the most vile way possible." He hid behind the mask of an exemplary young man, of a dedicated student, while causing irreparable trauma to innocent minds. Its manipulation was calculated, using secrets and threats to silence vulnerable victims. Society does not tolerate predators who infiltrate trusted homes. 15 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 8 years, permanent registration as a sex offender. lifelong ban on contact with minors or work involving children, Blake would be transferred immediately to a federal facility in Oregon, far from Portland and Seattle. Rebecca felt an immense weight coming off her shoulders. It was as if an anchor that had been dragging her for months finally let go. Tears streamed down her face, but they were of pure relief, of victory won with pain. To the side, Jennifer sobbed loudly, hugging Emma's mother. The other mothers cried in silence, hands joined, knowing that justice had been done. It was not revenge. It was security. It was the end of a dark chapter. Blake said nothing. His parents left with their heads down, without looking back. Outside the courthouse, the mothers hugged each other on the stairs, under the fine drizzle. Madison would no longer have to be afraid to meet him at family gatherings. None of the girls would need to. The threat was contained, behind bars, with consequences that would last the rest of his life. That verdict validated everything Rebecca had felt since the first tightness in her chest. It wasn't paranoia. It was maternal instinct in action, saving lives. A year after the events, Madison turned 10 with a small, intimate party in the backyard of her apartment in Queen Anne, Seattle. The summer sun shone softly, illuminating colorful balloons and a table with chocolate cake, her favorite. Only true Roosevelt Elementary School friends and trusted family were invited. Sarah and her daughter, Rebecca's grandmother, who had become even more vigilant, and Jennifer with Sophie. No big meetings, no risks. Madison wore a light blue dress, laughing out loud as she played tag with her friends, her face lit up by a genuine smile that Rebecca hadn't seen in so long. She was still in therapy monthly with Dr. Amanda Foster, but progress was visible. Madison drew unicorns flying over colored clouds again, instead of dark shadows. He participated in activities at school, such as the art club, and slept through the night without nightmares. Sometimes there were still setbacks, a closed door that made her hesitate, a tall man who resembled Blake, but she talked about it now, trusting her mother and therapist. Rebecca watched from the balcony, holding a cup of tea, feeling deep gratitude for having trusted that instinct that screamed that something was wrong. The other 4 girls also advanced at their own pace. Sophie, now 9 years old, was swimming in her grandparents' pool again, but only with adults present. Emma, at 8, drew stories of strong heroines. Lily and Chloe participated in child support groups, sharing experiences with other survivors. The mothers group had continued to meet bi-weekly at the Portland coffee shop, but now it was expanding its impact. They offered lectures in Oregon and Washington schools, churches and community centers. Rebecca became the leading voice, telling her story with raw honesty. The subtle signs ignored at first, the fear of being called paranoid, the courage to act. You are not crazy when you feel something wrong with your child. Trust that tightness in your chest. Ask. Investigate. Protect. They handed out leaflets with warning signs, sudden mood swings, secrets with adults, inexplicable fear, regression in habits like a light on to sleep. Schools like Roosevelt Elementary have adopted training based on their lectures. Rebecca knew that her courage in August had saved not only Madison, but possibly dozens of other children Blake might have reached in the future. As a teacher or volunteer, life was better and safer. Rebecca had returned to work at the hospital with renewed determination, training colleagues on child protection. Madison grew strong, knowing that her voice mattered. The legacy was one of empowerment. Mothers united, communities alert, children protected. Rebecca Thompson learned that being a mother is about more than feeding, cloaking and educating. Being a mom is trusting that tightness in your chest when something feels wrong, even if everyone around you says you're overreacting. It's believing in your daughter's trembling voice, even when she can barely form words. It is having the courage to face the person that everyone considers reliable, because protecting your child is above any reputation or family comfort. Madison was safe now, and that was all that mattered. The journey of recovery still continued for all 5 girls who were manipulated by Blake. Therapy, family support, and especially the fact that they were believed when they found the courage to speak out made all the difference. Rebecca always said to Madison, "You were incredibly brave, and your voice changed everything." These words were repeated by the other mothers to their daughters as well. Children need to know that they will be heard, believed, and protected at all times. Blake was serving his 15-year sentence in an Oregon federal prison, far from any possibility of harming another child. His name was permanently registered as a sex offender, and his reputation as an exemplary young man had been completely destroyed. Justice was served not because the system was perfect, but because a mother trusted her gut and acted before it was too late. If Rebecca had ignored those signs, if she had believed she was being paranoid, as part of the family initially suggested, how many other children would have been victims? The group of mothers born out of this shared tragedy has become a force for change in the communities of Seattle, Portland, and Beaverton. They visited schools, churches, and community centers, teaching other families to recognize signs of danger, sudden changes in behavior, fear of loved ones, secrets from adults, emotional manipulation through threats. No child should ever go through this, but when it does, it needs to be believed immediately, Rebecca said in each lecture. Madison today smiles more, sleeps without fear, and knows that she has a mother who will always put her safety first. She learned that speaking the truth, even in fear, is the bravest thing anyone can do. Rebecca learned that maternal instinct is not paranoia, it is protection, and that sometimes a minute of courage can save a whole life. This story reminds us that predators hide behind trustworthy smiles, college degrees, and impeccable reputations. But an attentive mother who trusts her instinct and acts courageously is worth 1,000 masks of false confidence. Protecting our children is our greatest responsibility, and believing them when they ask for help, even silently, is our greatest power. Rebecca saved Madison, Sophie, Emma, Lily, and Chloe that day. But mostly, she taught all mothers that trusting their own instinct is not exaggeration, it is love in its purest and most powerful form. If you liked this story, surely the next video that is appearing on your screen will thrill you too. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. A big kiss, and see you in the next heartwarming story.